Sekeres and Price for Monday, May 6th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're heading to a game or an event in downtown Vancouver, and there are more games, make it a staycation. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grady Sass hitting switches, conducting things with Sean Chessman. Big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in the Richmond Auto Mall. Fabulous deals right now, like the 2024 Nissan Rogue, which you can lease at 2.99% for 24 months. Go take one for a test drive. It's the do-everything car. Perfect for BC. Check it out at Applewood Nissan in Richmond. It is all good at Applewood.
Poll question today asking you, who is the underdog in this series? Edmonton or Vancouver? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter and YouTube. 4-0 in the regular season, the Canucks are against the Oilers, outscoring them 21-7, so tripling them up. Won the division, finished ahead in the standings, and yet somehow I'm voting for the Canucks as the underdog in this series.
I think
both teams try and carve out that territory.
Yeah, the Oilers are trying to do that because of that regulation. They're trying to walk the fine line, though. I've seen that from one country, in that they're trying to say, "Oh, but they're 4-0. We're against us. We're the underdogs," and yet we're not so daunted by the fact that they went 4-0.
Canucks are trying to have it both ways a little bit as well. We'll get into that here when we hear from Rick Talkin and JT Miller. Did you vote Canucks or Oilers?
The underdog is the Canucks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This team has been there before. The Oilers have. They have better recent form, and ultimately, the highest end talent, at least on the forward lines, it's to the Edmonton Oilers, despite the fabulous seasons of Paterson and JT Miller. So,
if only there was a metric we could go to. Bet365 has the Canucks as the underdog.
Like the betting underdog. Yes.
Well, I mean, the term comes from.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get to our top story. Round 2 for the first time in 13 years, and against a Canadian rival for the first time in 32 years. Believe it or not, despite being in the same division for nearly a half century, the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers have met just twice in the Stanley Cup playoffs, the last time in 1992. So it's not like you've got any kind of continuity from that search. Finally, it's here. Canucks and Oilers in a modern day playoff series.
And to me, it feels far more venomous and I don't know. It just feels big versus Flame series of late, the 14-15 Flame series in particular, which just seemed like, we're going to do this thing and whatever happens. I don't know. Maybe that was just because of the era of Canucks hockey and all those guys on sort of the ends of their line, if to some degree, Burrows and the Sedins and all that sort of stuff. But
I think you hit it. I think everybody recognized that was the end of the line for a lot of Vancouver Canucks players. And they hope to win. Fans hope to win, maybe extend that 2015 playoff run, or maybe even another year. But I think everybody realized the heyday of that core group had come and gone. Whereas I think a lot of fans out there feel like this is a beginning, right?
Could be.
And playing a more playoff experience club that is accustomed to winning Stanley Cup playoff series. Whereas for the Vancouver Canucks, as we well know, beating Nashville on Friday represented the first time the team had advanced in 13 years.
That's our top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube. Need a tire change or tire service? Mr. Lube provides no appointment tire service and sales. Drop by any time for tire rotation, tire repair, and balancing. And that services all makes and models, including EVs. 16 locations. Find yours at MrLube.com. I'll say this too about the matchup for the Vancouver Canucks. This is a time that is special for Canucks fans. Springtime playoff hockey. And because of the schedule being pushed as it is, like a 7-game series here will take us
Takes you to May 2-4, basically.
like this is it does this could be long weekend stuff in
Right.
May. It's ridiculous. It's really sad because it means the Stanley Cup trophy is probably not going to be hoisted until sometime in the 20s of June, which I'm
beyond the solstice, like into summer.
Like
it is quite possible.
I'm so against that.
Mhm.
But
so am I.
But if you only plan on going 2 to 3 rounds deep in the NHL, it's fun to have the outdoor viewing parties with t-shirts on.
Takes you right into the beautiful weather.
Yeah.
In fact, looks really, really nice later here in the week.
It does.
We had talked at one point, and forgive me, I can't remember if it was in series or as we were getting into the Nashville Predators series, but the one thing you haven't heard a lot of from the Vancouver Canucks, their head coach or their players this year, is, the easy red meat that was there all year. Everybody doubted us. We're proving all the doubters wrong. Well, Rick Tocchet was on that vein. Perhaps now is where it comes into play for this coach and his players. Let's hear from Rick Tocchet after practice Sunday, talking about letting the doubters doubt.
I love being doubted. I think if you start at the start of the year, whether teams, yes, as a Vancouver's going to make the playoffs, a lot of people said no, we're a bubble team, so we're underdogs, there. As the season went on, right, when are they going to fall? Now it's the same thing. People said, the Preds are going to win. We lost that game there. I just think we kind of like that underdog role, and I think players should embrace it. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to feel like you're capable. There's a point where you're saying, woe is me, but if it's sort of like with a wink, we're the underdog, by all means. Put the pressure on the other foot. And I think there is more pressure. The Oilers have yet to accomplish a heck of a lot given who they've got on that roster.
For sure.
They've got actual pressure. If they lost this series, the Oilers, it's not going to be a Leaf cull, but there would be big changes.
Well, they lose this series, then somehow, some way, you have to digest a year where the Canucks swept you in the regular season and then beat you in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, there was very little discussion going back to the start of the year that the Vancouver Canucks were a better team than the Edmonton Oilers. Then they win those 3 games early against the Oilers. And, we're sitting here talking about owning Connor McDavid and the Oilers, which by virtue of the record, they did. And then the Oilers go and rip off, how many was it? 18, 19 in a row, whatever it was. And then suddenly the hockey world writ large is back to, the Edmonton Oilers are amongst the Stanley Cup favorites. And a narrative that really held through most of the year because, as we know, the Canucks were good, but did not necessarily get back to the heights of the first couple of quarters of the season. Certainly not offensively, certainly not on the power play. And you enter this series where most everybody considers you the favorite. And not only that, looks at it and says, this is a pretty good draw in the second round. That when you take a look at what was going on and what could have been with Vegas, right?
Yeah.
That, okay, you've got a Canucks team that won the division, had a very, very good season, but also a Canucks team that struggled to score goals against the Nashville Predators.
Well, let's flip it around.
Like 13 goals in 6 games for the Canucks against the Preds. Needless to say, it's going to take a lot more than 13 goals to win this series.
Let's ask it this way. If the Canucks had their choice of the 3 other teams, of the 3 teams available right now in the playoffs, would they choose the Stars, the Avs, or the Oilers to face?
Yeah,
it's the Oilers.
I think it's the Oilers.
Yeah.
I mean, Colorado dominated them during the season.
They've got Stanley Cup pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas looks like they've figured things out now.
Well, because maybe Colorado is capable. Edmonton is a team capable of defensive implosion. I'm not sure Dallas is capable of.
Yeah, Georgiev might come back down to earth at some point. So,
right.
So there's that wild card.
So you've got that. Right. But of course, we haven't seen defensive implosion for the Oilers since going back to the early couple of months of the regular season. So it's kind of a hope bet unlikely to happen.
But
to
there's
begin
still
with.
there's defensemen over there that have rings.
Exactly.
So they know ultimately when the push comes to shove
Mhm.
how to defend in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Right. Let's hear mention the Canucks also trying to walk the line. I'm not sure JT Miller would ever cop to being an underdog in his life in anything. So he's asked about being an underdog and, doesn't necessarily agree.
I mean, I don't think we view ourselves as underdogs by any means. Like that's out of our control. We're not worried about that. We're another clean slate. We get another chance to re-rack and go again and against a good test. It doesn't matter who you're playing in the second round. I mean, they got there for a reason, and it just so happens to be one of our rivalry teams, and it's going to be a emotional, passionate, hard-fought series, and that's going to be good for us.
It really will. It really will. And you can say everything about the shit show that is the two fan bases going at each other right now. I think it's going to be pretty emotional on the ice.
I agree.
And JT Miller acknowledges it. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, and I think we'll get into this more with JPAT, but I think that's a big key to the series here is you take a look at that Oilers power play and the way it's going. Vancouver absolutely has to stay out of the box. No dumb penalties.
And this is where Nikita
Zadorov 200 feet from your goal, no offensive zone penalties, no retaliatory penalties, no gratuitous penalties. If you're taking a penalty, it's because you want to stop a grade A scoring chance. Virtually all other penalties are bad penalties for the Canucks because of the way that Oilers power play unit clicking at 50% in the opening round.
Nikita Zadorov outplayed the couple of penalties that he took in the last round.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't focused on the fact that he took those penalties.
Right.
Nikita Zadorov needs to make sure that we have a similar sort of review of the second round.
Because in Nashville, you're looking at one terrific defenseman, one terrific goal-scoring winger, and then a whole bunch of guys who really aren't elite level first power play, first line type of offensive talents. That is way different with this Oilers team, where you have 5 guys who are those sorts of elite offensive talents.
But because of the emotion being raised, though, like guys that are on those hair triggers, Miller is going to be in this boat too. And I like Miller. I think Miller has done a great job of focusing his emotions for good rather than evil here this season. That needs to continue. He cannot be the guy losing his sensibilities here. And same thing with Zadorov. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that I'm really worried about in that regard, but everyone's capable in the playoffs. Everybody's emotions get heightened, right? So
power play opportunities were 22-13 for the Nashville Predators in the first series. As we know, the Canucks did an extraordinary job on the penalty kill. As a matter of fact, according to Sportsnet stats, the Vancouver Canucks penalty kill unit clicking at 93.8% since April 10th. That is the best in the National Hockey League since that day. Thatcher Demko.
Well, before you leave special teams,
okay.
let's look at this fabulous graphic from Paul Paduti.
Oh, right. Adjusted hockey. And
underlining the importance of special teams on both sides. This is unbelievable. It was 8 for 8. The top 8 teams in special teams advanced in the playoffs. The bottom 8
and that was adding penalty kill and power play percentages. Paul Paduti at Adjusted Hockey for all the first round hot takes, blame games, tactical questioning, puck luck, play scrutinizing, calls to blow up organizations. All 8 matchups decided by special teams.
Now he clarified, he's like, this doesn't mean that the playoffs is just about special teams. But obviously it can be a big part. And ultimately, if the 5-on-5 is soft, this can be the tiebreaker. And I think there's been a lot of close series 5-on-5, and this was effectively the tiebreaker. And it's plain as day. By the way, Vancouver 5th best in that regard in the first round. For as much as the Canucks looked a little bit underwhelming at times 5-on-5, their 15% playoffs power play was not great, but their power penalty kill was amongst the best in the first round.
And going back to the JT Miller discussion about harnessing his energy, if you remember in the regular season, Miller did a great job at poking McDavid, getting underneath his skin to the point where he actually got a couple unsportsmanlikes in those games that Vancouver just steamrolled them in at Rogers Arena,
which is why they owned him.
You just hope that McDavid doesn't get in the ear of referees and they didn't give him sort of Gretzky treatment where anything near McDavid becomes penalty. I think that's going to be under close scrutiny by Canuck faithful, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, That's my mentions right now.
Yeah.
With David wearing a referee jersey.
Yeah.
It's not Kelly Sutherland in game one, is it?
I don't think we've seen the refs.
Okay.
Yeah, not yet.
Rick Tocchet is pretty tight-lipped about his goaltending. We do know that Thatcher Demko is out for game one. We do know that Thatcher Demko was not at main practice today.
The other three were also.
And in fact, do we have a clip on this or?
Yes,
yeah.
No, okay.
Video clip here. You want
Okay,
to fire it?
Yeah, let's listen
on the possible return.
Well, you always hope, or the expect. I mean, things change day to day, but there has been improvement. To what extent? And injuries too. I've been, from my experience, it's a slow process. All of a sudden, 2-3 days later, oh man, I really feel good. I don't know where that's at in that sense. It has improved, but to what percentage, I don't know.
And that's courtesy of the Canucks. Here's the thing, and when he says you always hope, I think that's telltale.
But he's also right. There's that moment where all of a sudden you just wake up and you feel better.
Sure.
And then you got to wait days after that because you don't immediately go right back to it. But
yeah, I mean, it does sound, if you read the tea leaves, like he's not going to be available for the series, or if he is going to be available, it's going to be quite deep into the series. I almost feel like it behooves the Canucks to sit there and take the attitude, there is no Demko, not for this round. It's Arturas Shilov's series. You may need to go to Casey DeSmith at some point.
See, I disagree with that.
You're riding with Shilov's after the Game 6 shutout and the series win. And just forget about Thatcher Demko. Don't let him be a distraction. Don't let the, will he or won't he return in this series affect you in any way, shape, or form. What do you disagree with?
I think if Shilov's is ventilated in game 1, it's DeSmith in game 2.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Shilov series, you may have to go to DeSmith because if the kid has a stinker,
if it's 4-1 Oilers in game 1, who you playing in game 2?
We always play these games, but is that with an empty netter? Or is that with 4 goals on? Is that
4 goals surrendered?
4 goals surrendered. How many are bad? 1, 2? It's all 4. Then I think that speaks for itself.
Well, Saravalli did say on the DFO pod today that there is a distinct possibility later in the series that Demko could play.
Right. But what I'm saying is I think there's a danger in Demko on his white horse riding to the rescue here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any Canucks player needs to be thinking about that.
No. But
and in particular, the 2 goaltenders. Prepare as though there is no Thatcher Demko, and if he does happen to come back later in the series, then you're pleasantly surprised.
I agree with you on that, but on Shilov's, it has to be like a narrow 2-1 loss. I think it's winning, you're in. I think if he loses and he gives up more than 2 goals, it's DeSmith the next game.
No, I see a world where if they lose and he's awesome and they give up 3 goals, I would come back with him. I have more faith in Shilov's than DeSmith.
I love his rebound control and all that.
I think he's on the puck more, and I think the rebound control is better.
Well, and DeSmith did beat them twice in the regular season.
True. And he's got recent experience about beating the Oilers. That's also in his back pocket. And I think that the coaching staff acknowledges that.
But I think that's I don't want to say break glass in case of emergency, but I think that's a back pocket thing. I don't think that's a front pocket thing.
No McDavid in that final Saturday.
Correct.
Season win. Regular season.
That's always going to be the caveat for that game. But the results earlier in the season don't matter per se, the win, the W or the L. But what you do get experience from there is I remember what it feels like to have Connor McDavid skating at me really fast. Mm-hmm. That doesn't go away. And everybody's intensity is up. His intensity is going to be up, McDavid's, but so is yours as a Canuck. So what I think is useful in the 4-0 record is not so much the 8 points that they got, but that feeling of we can have success against this team. I don't think there's fear in facing the Oilers, which is different than if you went 0-4 versus the Oilers in the regular season and all of a sudden you're plunked into this. I think you'd be a little bit fearful. I don't think they've got fear of the Oilers, which is a good way to start at the very least.
Let's hear from Arturas Shilovs, who's talking about, he's just living in the moment.
You just have to be always ready, like a lot of things happen in life, like accidents, someone gets hurt, right? And you just have to be ready to embrace your moment. Every single like day is a challenge, right? So you have to embrace it, and that's how I do it, like day by day.
And I almost feel like his attitude, if it's infectious with the rest of the group, could be a big help for the Vancouver Canucks, because they're the team that to some degree is playing with house money here. They're the team that to some degree wasn't supposed to be here. They're the team that to some degree, if they win, it's purely gravy. Artur Shilov certainly didn't expect to be in this spot. And if the Canucks can play freely without the burden of pressure that you were previously talking about, that is clearly on Edmonton, because, well, virtually every player of Connor McDavid, if not Leon Draisaitl's stature in National Hockey League history, has broken through and won a Stanley Cup at some point. There are a few exceptions, sure. Marcel Dion, your boy, Ducky, Howard Chuck. But most every superstar player of this ilk wins at some point, and frankly wins multiple cups. So far, they haven't been able to do it. In fact, so far, the best they've gotten to is a Western Conference final where they were obliterated by Colorado.
Well,
they're halfway, even if they win this series. So if they're the team that gets caught looking ahead, if they're the team that feels the pressure of this series, and you've got a loosey-goosey rookie goaltender in the Canucks net doing his thing, and the players in front of him can play that way as well. And when I say loosey-goosey, I mean free of pressure, not necessarily in defensive posture. Then I think that's one of the methods to victory in this series for Vancouver.
Well, at minimum, players of that ilk get to Stanley Cups. Dion did. He may not win it. So, like,
Dion did?
Did he not?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Was he on the 93 team that lost to Montreal? I didn't think so, but go ahead.
So, yeah, I think there's certainly this foregone conclusion that we're thinking that eventually the Oilers are going to go on this run, but that can be an awful big weight. And, you know, it's a bigger league now. We certainly had that opinion in a smaller league. In a 32-team league, is it still a fait accompli that a superstar is going to win the Stanley Cup? Like, it's a different metric now.
Well, I hear what you're saying. It might be more difficult to get there. It might be more difficult to win, but usually they are the drivers. Like usually you get a player of that ilk, they drive a team to those heights.
Okay, but
so I hear what you're saying.
But
I still think, I mean, it's taken place with Sydney here, right? He's gotten to a bunch of cups, won a bunch.
Dion, by the way, 10 games in the end.
No, I know. He never made
high water mark. 10 games. Wow.
Oh.
But you talked about the satisfaction of a Canuck fan here in the second round. I think they need to make this a competitive series. Ultimately, this is a final resting spot would be okay, but getting swept or a 5-game series would leave a poor taste in the mouths of many.
For sure.
Pushing this to 6 games and losing, being competitive, I think that Canuck fans would feel like they accomplished something.
I agree with you, but even then, I would think it would be temporary disappointment and a whole lot of excitement and optimism coming back next fall.
Oh, sure. I mean, you always lick your wound and get back at it.
I don't think it would linger too much. Like 2011 lingered. Oh, my God, did it linger? It lingered multiple years. I mean, to the point where several years later, John Tortorella said, we got to stop talking about this.
Matt, if it was
there's no way this one would linger, I think, beyond a few weeks or months at most.
In the moment, people are going to be upset.
Of course,
they're a 30,000 view of it, and you think, well, like the Kevin Bieksa thing on Hockey Night in Canada. Like, who had them going this far? People talked about, okay, they might be a bubble team,
right?
Get a wild card spot, maybe finish third in the division. You know, now you're all of a sudden facing a
that was
team.
The most optimistic I heard preseason was third in the division.
Logically, intellectually,
third in the division.
Logically, intellectually, all that is fine. We know that's not how people think. They think emotionally. And I think, you know, if they were taking on any other team except an Alberta team right now, I think the fact that this is an Alberta team, and while they haven't faced each other in the playoffs a long time, anything Alberta is a rival for the Vancouver Canucks. Again, you move the bar a little bit. And I think people want to see some level of success in this series at the very least.
The analytics are on Edmonton's side. Dom Lucian, the Athletic, his model, giving the Oilers a 74% chance to win this. Oh, Dom and his mentions and Canucks Twitter. Vancouver wins this series.
Like Vancouver's like a tier 3 team. Is that sort of what he's suggesting?
I don't know, but all I know is his mentions are going to be entertaining.
Let's go with tier 3. Yeah.
Take a lead in this series or happen to win it. Here's JT Miller. He was asked about the regular season and how much of a carryover would take place into this series. Here's what he had to say.
Maybe a couple system things that worked, but I mean, you got to imagine that, the playoffs are a whole nother animal. I mean, you can use the Winnipeg and Colorado thing from the regular season. I don't think it means a whole lot. I think that they know what they need to do in the postseason, and they obviously played really well so far to this point. So both teams are hungry for their own purposes or their own reasons, and like I said, it's a highly anticipated battle for us.
Student of the game knows the storyline of that Colorado-Winnipeg series.
Well, yeah, right? I mean, because it was what people were talking about, that Winnipeg absolutely dominated the Avalanche in the regular season and then got their tails kicked by Colorado in 5 games. And incidentally, if this is it for Rick Bowness, we wish him the absolute best in retirement. One of the great people.
That's a good decision, too.
Stepping down. I mean, he had some health challenges this year. And
no point in getting fired at this point in your career.
Exactly.
Go out on your terms.
No, exactly.
I know there's a financial benefit to getting fired, but no, it's...
And honestly, if Judy and the kids don't say, okay, enough, Dad, we need you now, I would love to see him behind a microphone somewhere, because he's one of the great communicators and talkers of the game as well. Sense of humor and
longtime Canuck assistant, of course. So I'm sure fans have a soft spot in their heart.
But the thing about Rick Bowness is, whether you're in Vancouver, whether you're in Winnipeg, Ottawa, and many other stops around the league, there's a fondness for the guy.
Yes,
and I think on top of what JT Miller said with regards to Winnipeg and Colorado, because it wasn't too long ago where Winnipeg was kicking Colorado's tail in the regular season. In the case of the Canucks and Oilers, there was that late game, but the majority of the season series was played in the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, and as far as symptoms, as just like a strategy,
we know
same
how much
thing. It's so long ago.
We know how much both teams have changed. I mean, Edmonton was an unmitigated defensive disaster in those early games. Scoring chances given up aplenty, could not get a save. You remember some of that was Jack Campbell in the early going. Before the move to Skinner, but even Skinner was getting lit up in those days, and the Oilers' defense was just a tire fire. The Canucks, meanwhile,
they were not that great defensively back then either.
No, they weren't, and
they changed too.
But the difference was Vancouver was riding that ridiculous PTO and shooting percentage. Virtually every time they got a great scoring chance early in the season, they scored, and conversely, every time they allowed a great scoring chance early in the season, Thatcher Demko or Casey DeSmith were there making unbelievable saves. Second half Canucks, as we chronicled, Blake, somehow, some way, after all of those goals in the first 3 months of the season, the Canucks enter this series as a defensively oriented team that wants to win the ugly duckling 3-2, 2-1 game. And in fact, did so against the Nashville Predators, where the power play scores 2 goals, both in one game, where the shot clock until the final game reads in the teens or the 20s, or the one they get 12 shots. I mean, it was everything they could do to get 20 shots on goal in the series, let alone score a bunch of goals.
I can't imagine this series looks like that. I really can't. I think the Oilers play a game that is going to not suck the Canucks out of their system. I think they are disciplined enough to stay in their system, but there's just going to be some room. And when there's room afforded to you, the offensive players are going to move into it. And I think there is the potential that we don't see 2-1 games here, which is a good thing for us aesthetically. And I just wonder how that changes the Canucks' odds.
Wow.
They need to score on the shots that they're given, obviously. I think that there's the potential that this series does open up for Elias Paterson in a good way. I don't think now we said this about
it has to. Like you're no longer at a point where you can win. We
said this about the Nashville third line, but the Oilers third line, I think even more so, opens itself up for Elias Paterson and company to have some success, but he's got to score on the shots that he's given. And Skinner's on a great heater right now. But with a younger player, younger goalie who, and you could say the same thing about Shelovs as well, I suppose. But, which of these two young keepers is going to be able to keep their stuff together for a longer period of time? We'll find out.
Well, first of all, if you look at the Oilers scoring in round one, and remember, this is against that LA Kings in their 1-3-1 suffocating trap, or at least it was suffocating for the Vancouver Canucks through most of the season.
No, they kept the Oilers to 13 shots in one game.
Right. But even with that, Blake,
Oilers won that game.
McDavid with 12 points in the series.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nearly 2.5 points per game in the series. Draisaitl, and even 5 goals, 10 points in the series. That's 2 points a game. Zach Hyman, 7 goals in 5 games. Evan Bouchard was nearly 2 points per game in this series.
Power play's a hell of a drug, right?
So, Nuge, Pride of Burnaby, 6 points in the series. So they score and they score and they score some more.
The disappointing part is
there's going to have to be an element of the Canucks outscoring them at some point in the series. And again, if we're talking rough victory for Vancouver, I think you're probably going to have to outscore them in one game. You're probably going to have to lock them down in one game. That gets you 2 wins. Then the other ones, you're hoping for more traditional, classic, tight games where you get a bounce, you get some puck luck, or you win the special teams battle somehow, some way against this extraordinary Oilers power.
The Canucks aren't winning this series without winning one of the games 5-3. Like the Canucks in one of these games,
they're going to have to score a bunch of goals in one of these games.
They have to figure a way to get
I don't
going
see 4 wins coming with 3 goals or fewer. No way. No way.
No, it's not.
And if it does happen, well, hats off to Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote and the defense score and the goaltending. But it is really difficult to see the series playing out with Vancouver winning in the manner in which they won against Nashville. Low shot totals, pretty much impotent power play, and not a lot of even strength goals.
Just listen to this. You talked about all these gaudy point totals. McDavid, 12 points in the series, as you outlined. Even strength points in the series for Connor McDavid. 3.
Yeah.
3. But they have to stay off the power play. They have to keep them off the power play. 3 points. How many points for Draisaitl? 3 even strength points in the series. We just tried to walk back a little bit the importance of special teams. But boy, this series looks like it could come down to special teams again.
Yeah. Well, and 3 is by no means a big total. But here's the thing.
More than that, Besser, Joshua, Miller all have more points than that even strength in the first round.
Well, but here's the thing. Even with power play, Blake, there's only 4 Canucks who had more than 3 points in the series. Joshua, Hughes, Miller, and Besser. Everyone else was 3 or less in the series. So, no, I hear what you're saying, and you're right. And we got to fix your camera there. You're turned into a black box.
Oh, my gosh.
And you're right. But, yeah, some of this is going to have to be by virtue of the offensive player scoring. And if you happen to get a game or two where you do have success locking them down, the one close game or the one low scoring game that the Kings were, you got to get that one too. Question for you, because Rink-Wide Vancouver asked it as a poll question, got extraordinary response, more than 4,000 votes. Who was the best player in the series against Nashville?
The best player in the series.
For the Vancouver Canucks. Who was their best player?
I mean, emotionally, you want to say Shelovs in the end.
Right. I think Shelovs was the most important given, the
but
way
he doesn't
the
play in every
went.
game. So
he only played 3 of the 6.
So, if playing in the majority of the games is a criteria, which is not a crazy criteria to have.
No, but also, not one you're beholden to.
I mean, I guess I default to a Miller or Hughes. Probably JT Miller, I guess.
Besser won the poll with 35%.
Yeah.
Miller got 23%. Zadorov was just behind at 23%. I thought Zadorov was probably their most consistent player in the series, game 1 through 6.
Yeah.
He was the guy that after every game, I thought, yeah, he's pretty good tonight.
I'll say this.
Miller would be on that list as well.
Besser, you can argue, single-handedly wins them a game.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelovs does too, but Besser plays in every game. So
Right. But Besser's pretty quiet and
but when you can say single-handedly you won your team a game.
Yep.
Because they're not winning that game without his heroics at the end there. So
yeah. Well, and speaking of heroics, Tyler Myers, Sammy Salo now linked in Canucks playoff history. The general, the battalion. We salute them both.
Right.
And as many have pointed out, the two big defensemen, of course, Tocchet craved those big defensemen. Big. Sizable.
Salo made his return from that injury in that series, I believe.
Did he ever?
I remember scrumming Salo on the general battalion in Nashville.
Well, Sammy came prepared that day. The scrum was huge.
Yeah.
And he said, good news. Got me in the general, not the battalion. I'll be good to go in game, whatever it was. Philip Roenick. First of all, I think Roenick is playing through something. I think he has been for some time. Needless to say, he's on the list with Elias Paterson of Canucks who have to be better in round 2. And frankly, I think Garland and Joshua are on that list as well. They were extraordinary in game 1 against Nashville. Got together on the game-winning goal in game 4. But I think it needs to be a little more consistent from those two guys. I'm also wondering whether Pius Suter is going to take off now. Because it wasn't a lack of chances in round 1. It was just a lack of finish. And look, we've talked about him. That's what separates him from being a frontline, top line, first power play unit guy in the National Hockey League. That's
why he went way too deep into the summer being on side.
He's not going to bury the same high percentage of his chances as guys who are in that position can. But I do wonder whether he's able to roll some momentum from scoring the series clinching goal into this next round.
Did he end up getting the hat trick versus the Blackhawks that night? Did he get a hat trick? I think he did. Like he's a bit of a streaky scorer. And yeah, I had that thought driving into work today. I was like, I wonder if that opens things up for him just a little bit. Yeah, because unlike some of the other zeros in the first round and guys who are really struggling towards the end of the year, and Ilya Mikheyev is on both lists. Höglander, needless to say, had a very rude awakening to the Stanley Cup playoffs, was not a factor. Suter, for me, sure, there were quiet games, but, I felt like Suter was still engaged amidst some really terrible luck, snake bit, and, of course, some of it on him missing variable chances. But, he talked about how he's been eaten out of a straw for the last couple of weeks. That's the other thing that's at play here, right? He's got some serious jaw and dental issues after taking a Carson Soucy shot to the face. He's graduated to mashed potatoes and fish. He's still not eating steak or anything that needs to be chewed all that much. So, yeah, I wonder if Suter is sitting on a better performance in this second round series.
We had a lot of chances.
We should mention.
Well, that's it.
Because there's a lot of guys that are dinged and sore and all that sort of thing. Everybody did skate today, full attendance. And that includes now Thatcher Demko, by the way, as we join you live. He has taken.
Did he join the group? Or did he skate out?
I mean, there's a smattering of guys still out there, I think. Okay. So no, he wouldn't have been taking part in the practice per se, but he's joining at the end of practice, and Ian Clark's working with him. So that storyline does continue. But.
Yeah. JT Miller, and we don't have this audio clip. I'm just going to read it. He said after the game, "Why would I want to leave something that I've always been looking for?" And I think we're now at the place that JT Miller, his happy place, the place he's always been looking for, where he is not just the alpha in the room, because he's been that for the Canucks for several years, but also the number one centerman. He's got that double going on right now. It's funny because earlier in the year we were talking about, like, one of the things Elias Pettersson has to decide about re-signing with the Canucks is, does he think that JT Miller is that number 2 forward on a cup team? Now almost the shoe is on the other foot. Can Petey be the number 2 forward to what JT Miller is doing? But Blake, you may notice he's available after every game in practice. He's doing a lot of the talking for this room, which I think he likes.
Yeah.
His play is backing it up. And he's the emotional epicenter of the team as well.
It's funny how the two are a perfect salt and pepper, Quinn Hughes and him, in terms of leadership. Canucks have provided a few behind-the-scenes videos in the playoffs of what the scenes look like, particularly after the wins, obviously. And they had a great video of what the room looked like after the series victory. And as the players got into the room, Quinn Hughes was in the center of the dressing room and gave sort of individual hugs and quick chats to every single player as they came in. So he's not the raw high emotion guy like JT Miller is.
No.
But the two of them have their role, and I think both of them are serving that room really nicely. And guys, Quinn Hughes is a young buck, and you got guys older than him coming to him and almost not starry-eyed, but looking to him with eyes of El Capitan. We did it. We got through. And so I think both of them deserve shutouts for making that work. What's interesting as you bring it back to Paterson now is, I think Paterson's got a little less of a leg to stand on of being hard done by in the captaincy. If he ever did feel snubbed, I don't think he did. But if there was a smidge of being overlooked, I think he realizes all that has gone in the right direction. And in terms of the first line centered role, same sort of thing. Performance speaks for itself. The other guys are the only thing he could bring to management at the end of this season is, guys, certified winger, please.
Oh, of course.
So he could say that and say, you got a 40 goal scorer alongside JT Miller. I need somebody. He's got that in his back pocket, but I think ultimately he's going to have
got a 40 goal scorer. Elias needs the 40 goal scorer.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
yeah. I think ultimately Elias has just got to find a way to drag the guys along with him.
Let's face it, 2 40 goal scorers are pretty hard to come by. So, just more competency.
Yeah.
On the wing. Arturs Silovs, Nashville was good for 3.2 goals in game 6, and somehow it was a shutout. And I got to say, one of my favorite Canuck images since I've been covering the team is the still frame of the final frantic seconds Friday at Bridgestone Arena, where you have Arturs Silovs, 2 Canucks splayed near his pads, 1 Canuck fully encaged, and then JT Miller playing basically backup goalie, standing in the middle of the crease. Let's hear from the Latvian goalie on the final flurry in Nashville and winning the series.
I saw it pretty quick. It was 2 shots in a row, right? And then it's a rebound from the left pad, I guess. And I was just diving, I just couldn't do anything too much because it was a far side for me. So I was just jumping like a soccer goalie. And then I saw everyone just collapsing on the top of me, and we managed to block it, which is incredible. And then I tried to regain my feet and be ready for the last shot.
Which is how Joseph Woll got injured for the Leafs, by the way, in that meaningless goal that he let in game 6 at this final horn. So you were hopeful that there was nothing going to be like that as a result of that final flurry. But I don't know if you saw there was another Renaissance painting. We talked about that with the Dakota Joshua goal.
Right.
There was another Renaissance painting there. Somebody caught from behind the net. Just all the bodies, and it was just
so many bodies.
It's amazing.
So much matter.
Yes.
No holograms, T. Gallagher.
No.
All the physical matter in front of
and emotion, and it was so good.
And Artie's got a little bit of goalie in him, doesn't he, Grady? He's got a little bit of that, not quite the same as the rest.
Oh yeah, he's a goalie.
When he talks about it, yeah. We should also mention Paterson, a Lady Byng finalist. He's the first Canuck to be named a Lady Byng finalist. Did you see that?
Really? Yeah.
That's really surprised
that
by
Sedin
that.
didn't give it.
Well, yeah.
That's interesting. It's a pretty star-studded Lady Bing.
Is it ever? Yes. Two other bits here before we move on to our menu and our Bet365 bet of the day. Our old friend Travis Green, the new head coach of the Ottawa Senators, according to Darren Dreger.
Yeah.
So the interim job in New Jersey, we talked about it last week. Jersey's in interviewing different candidates. They allowed Green to interview elsewhere. He now links up with the Senators, so wish him the best of luck there. Second Canadian team now that Travis will be coaching. And Blake, if there's one thing that Canucks and Oilers fans, before we drop the gauntlet, before we start hating each other, hating our neighbor here over the next couple of weeks, there's one thing that Canucks and Oilers fans and Twitter can agree upon. ABV, baby. ABV. Congratulations to the Dallas Stars on advancing past the defending Stanley Cup champions. And I am so pleased that is the last time I will be referring to the Vegas Golden Knights as the defending Stanley Cup champions.
Well, rest assured, you did get a lot of company in the ABV bandwagon, but not for the same reason.
I was ahead of the curve on this one.
Well, maybe you enlisted under very different circumstances.
No. I didn't enlist. I fucking chartered ABV.
But
ABV was my thing when everyone was talking about, there's such a great story. There's such a great story. This expansion team going to the Stanley Cup final. I'm like, this isn't a great story at all. This is the Stanley Cup being transactional.
But that's
guy
the thing.
paid $500 million. Gary's like, okay, we'll gift you an instant microwave contender.
You're mistaking everybody hating Vegas this year as support of your cause. They are not in support of your cause. They are in support of the Vegas Golden Knights and the LTIR treatment. That's what they're against. It has nothing to do with them being a recent expansion team that won the Stanley Cup. So this is false pretense. I take issue with it.
No. It was ABV for the reasons I just outlined early. Then it was ABV for the cheating in the last 3 years.
That's why people joined you.
Come all. The ABV bandwagon has a lot of space.
You're an ABV agnostic, whatever it is that brought you to the cause doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I see.
Just so long as you vote in the appropriate. I don't care what your issue is, so long as you're part of the team. Let's get to today's menu, and it's brought to you by Greta, and we're going to be at Greta later in the week, as a matter. Well, I guess Sunday. We'll be at Greta on Sunday. Come join us for a watch party, give away some prizes, do some trivia, some silent auctions in support of a charitable partner, give away free game cards for 3 hours of gameplay. Those have been a big hit, particularly during the intermission, and there's a first goal sociable when a certain team scores the first goal of the game, or their first goal of the game. 50 West Cordova. Come join us at Greta. And thanks to the fantastic team there at Greta that's taken such good care of us here.
Absolutely.
For the first few games. We're talking to JPAT first.
Yep.
Yeah. Jeff Patterson's going to join us, our Canucks reporter. John Shannon from there. John does a lot of work on Oilers telecasts, so he has good insight into that club. Great guy to talk to, and particularly on the Stanley Cup broadcast assignments, because I know Canucks fans were wondering how that was going to go. I think it was pretty cut and dry that if the Leafs weren't continuing, then the number one play-by-play crew for Hockey Night in Canada, Chris Cuthbert, Craig Simpson, was going to follow the last two Canadian teams standing. And I think that was always going to be the case, but that caught some by surprise. So, yeah, Cuthbert, Simpson, Scott Oak are going to be your broadcast team.
I'm very glad this worked out this way, because it would have been a holy war over what happened.
I mean,
alternatively.
I love John's play-by-play, and I wish he could have continued here. I wish the folks at Rogers would see him in a different light, because I think he's magnificent.
Well, he's also magnificent in an objective way. Did you see there was some in the Toronto media that were lamenting that the Game 6 win didn't have a more homer call? Members of the actual media were like, it's so disappointing that we don't get a regional call on TV for the game.
Oh, TV, please. I mean, you're telling me Bowen wasn't a homer call?
No, but they were praising that, saying, I wish we could get that on TV.
Yeah. Well, as we've also talked about, like Hockey Night is now sort of stuck in a place that Hockey Night wasn't stuck with in earlier incarnations. And what I mean by that, and we talked about it with John Shannon last week after the passing of Bob Cole, is Bob Cole did not call regional games during the week. Bob Cole called Saturday night games. And more often than not, that was the Leafs, because more often than not, the Leafs were going to generate the biggest audience. But at different times in his history and in Hockey Night's history, that was the Canadiens. And different times in Hockey Night and Hull's history, that was the Battle of Alberta. But that's not the model anymore. You know, the model, when you have a parent company that owns the national rights
and a bunch of
the regional rights, is that they get guys to call games for both outlets. And I can understand that. You want the best of the best, particularly on the national side of things. And you want guys who are familiar with the teams that you're going to be covering on the national side of things. But it's just a different model than what Hockey Night had for years and years, when it was the CBC and the CBC alone and not encumbered by this Rogers partnership.
But it's a different model from Vancouver to Edmonton too. Shorty calls an objective game. Shorty is not a homer call. They call it for a Vancouver audience. There's an onus or a focus on the Canucks, but it's not a homer call. Jack is a great play-by-play guy.
I think Jackson,
but being an American guy, he calls it very much with a homer slam, which is the norm south of the border, and that can't fly in the playoffs. Like you can't have that in the playoffs. So to me, Shorty would have been a perfect guy to slide over, because he calls an objective game. He just does. You don't hear him cheering on the Vancouver Canucks. So it would have been a no-brainer, but it's a moot point. Don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. So Cuthbert and Simpson on the call for the Canucks and Oilers, however long it may last. Let's get to Bet365 and our bet of the day. The segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. And I'm just going to put this out there for all the optimistic Canucks fans, for all the Canucks thinking this is our year. We've made it to the final 8, the second round. I'm a true believer. Haven't been here since 2011. Well, Canucks are the longest shot on the board at Bet365 to win the Stanley Cup at this point. Vancouver plus 1,500 to hoist the chalice. So 15-1 if you're interested in the Canucks to win the Stanley Cup.
I'm looking ahead to game props for game number 1, and it looks like it might be a suggestion under Elias Pettersson's name. It says anytime.
It's pretty good.
But I'm talking
every once in a while, he's funny.
I'm talking goal scorer. Anytime goal scorer for Elias Pettersson in game 1 is huge value, given what you know intrinsically is inside that player. Plus 240 for Paterson to just score 1 goal in game number 1.
That was a very good line.
Yeah,
very funny.
Thank you. Let's move on.
You see how I cheer for your victory?
Oh, you're a homer too.
ABV started right here in this chair. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Jeff Patterson is next. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Joining us now, Rinkwide Vancouver's Jeff Patterson, who will have a special preview show dropping here with former Canuck president and captain Trevor Linden, as we get to the business of the second round series against Edmonton and look back on the series victory over Nashville. How you doing, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited. On to round 2.
Have you been able to avoid any Oilers fans over the weekend? Have they been coming at you already as the taunting, the tribalism started in your corner?
I've seen it. I haven't been on the receiving end yet. But yeah, I mean, look, that's part of this whole thing. And I asked Quinn Hughes on Sunday, if as an American who has spent lots of time on this side of the border, obviously in his childhood and again here with the Canucks, but did he fully grasp the cultural significance of two Canadian teams, the last two Canadian teams and their fan bases going head to head here in the playoffs? And he said, probably not, but hope that he would by the end of the series here. And, if it's a lengthy series, and let's hope that it is, just to boost the drama, then yes, I think everybody will have a better sense of what it means to have two teams, particularly two Western teams. We've seen the Battle of Alberta recently, but boy, it's been a long time. I had forgotten how long it had been since the Canucks and the Oilers had met in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, 1992, 32 years ago, only twice in history, despite playing in the same division.
Doesn't make sense.
So bizarre. Well, they were up. Canucks were down. Canucks were up. They were down.
But the Flames, they've crossed paths with the Flames so much. It's just crazy.
So, Jeff, just macro, 30,000 foot view here. What do you think is going to be important in this series?
Discipline for the Canucks. It really goes without saying when you see what the Oilers did to the Kings, who were the second best penalty killing team in the National Hockey League over the regular season. And it was basically a coin toss whether the Oilers were going to score when they got the power play. So, it's one of the things that still sticks with me a few days after the fact is the power play discrepancy in that Canuck-Nashville series that was so razor thin in so many ways. And yet the power plays were 22-13 for the Predators, including 7-2 over the final couple of games. Like that just didn't seem right. It didn't seem right in the moment. It doesn't seem right a few days after the fact. Canucks won. So ultimately, give their penalty killing a ton of credit. But as good as their penalty kill was against the Predators, it's going to have to be lights out better against an Oiler power play that just scores at will. So I would say the best way to kill penalties and prevent the Oiler power play from doing the damage is stay out of the penalty box. That's probably asking too much, but that absolutely at the top of my list in block, capital letters, underline, bold, whatever, is discipline. And then on those occasions when you do have to kill, find a way. Just gut it out. They did that against the Predators. And the other thing, too, to mention, guys, is that the Predators had the second best power play in the NHL from the All-Star break on. So when we give praise to the Canucks power play, it wasn't like they were facing a bunch of jumps here. The Predators hit the playoffs on a bit of a run, obviously, and with a power play that had found its way through the second half of the season. And so I wrote a piece at Canucks Army that for me, the Canucks penalty kill was the unsung hero of that opening round. And how about Ian Cole at 35, leading the Canucks by 6 minutes in shorthanded ice time. And at the conclusion of Friday's game, led all NHLers in shorthanded ice time in the first round. I think Brandon Carlo of the Bruins, he had to play 7 games, obviously, in that opening round against Toronto. But Ian Cole, the veteran, this is why they went out and got him. I know he kind of faded a little down the stretch, but boy, breathed some new life into his game, especially on the penalty kill against the Predators.
What do you think this series looks like aesthetically? Is it ultimately a playoff series that's going to be grindy like the Predators? Does it open up a little bit more? Do we see more goals like we saw a little bit in the LA series with the Oilers and more so in Winnipeg, Colorado?
I think the Oilers hope that they can open it up a little bit, and obviously any shift with McDavid, you're probably going to stretch defenses, and that'll be the challenge to try to slow him down. Do I think the Canucks can beat the Oilers with 13 goals? Probably not. So they are going to have to find a way to generate a little bit more. Their power play would help. And again, they didn't get many opportunities, but they had 13 and scored on 2 of them, but only in the one game. In that same game, game 3 in Nashville, those were the 2 Canuck power play goals. So I'm curious to see. It's been a while, obviously, between games here. So it's been a long time since the Canucks have had a power play. Is there a little rust built up there? Can they get the power play in a groove when they get their opportunities? Do they want to trade chances with the Oilers? Probably not. But I think in saying that, if you can hold down McDavid and Draisaitl, you're not going to keep them off the scoreboard entirely. We know that sort of the underbelly of the Oilers, there are some questions about their depth there, and you saw it in the regular season. You saw it that final game that the two teams met. I don't put a ton of stock in the 4-0 regular season record because 3 of the games were so early, but that final game, and I know it without McDavid, but still, like, those were the Oilers. They had an opportunity, and guys like Pia Suter and Elias Lindholm stepped up for the Canucks. The Oilers' depth guys didn't necessarily step up. And so, again, do what you can to slow down McDavid and Draisaitl in the power play and hope that you force some of the others on that Oilers team to try to beat you. And I think that's one path to success for the Vancouver Canucks. In saying that, though, the Canucks need some of their spread scoring as well. Only 6 guys scored in that opening round against the Predators. So same cast of characters, same storylines that we talked about late in the Nashville series. It starts with Elias Paterson, but there are some others, obviously, that have to step up offensively for the Vancouver Canucks.
So not putting a lot of stock in head-to-head, Jeff. Why not?
Just because the 3 games in the first 9 games of the regular season, it cost the Oilers a coach, obviously. I think McDavid wasn't at 100%. I think he was playing through something. For the Canucks, you can try to take some things out of it. If you're the Oilers, I think you sweep it under the rug that they're a different team. They play different stylistically under Chris Knobloch. They've been better, obviously, and they're in a groove with their power play right now. So the power play never really got on track against the Vancouver Canucks. Credit to the Canucks penalty killers. But the fact that 3 of those games were early to, right off the hop, the home openers for both teams, credit to the Canucks for doing what they had to do to get those wins. And hey, would the Canucks sign up for Brock Besser scoring 4 on opening night of this series like he did on the opening night of the series? Of course they would. That's probably not going to happen, though. I don't put a ton of stock in it. If it allows the Canucks to, feel a little bit better about themselves starting at home where they did beat the Oilers both times, then take what you can from it if you are the Vancouver Canucks. But ultimately, I just think, we've moved so far down the line here, and that the Oilers are rolling with their best players, leading the way, and some others following in suit, and we'll see how it goes from here.
We know that Demko is not going to play game 1, and who knows about whether he's going to play in the series. Is there a danger here in the Canucks waiting on Demko to come back and save the day, Jeff? Should they just have as their mindset Artur Shilovs as our goaltender for the series?
Yeah, I think so. And I hope that is the way they approach it. And look, Artie's given them every reason to believe. I know it's only been 3 games here in the playoffs, but get thrown into the fire, the surprise start in game 4 that goes to overtime. And even though he didn't face a shot in overtime, still, grinding late into the game where he knew he couldn't give up another one, and he didn't. And then to pitch a shutout in an elimination game for a young guy getting these experiences. He still talks about drawing on what he did at the World Championship, and that was less than a calendar year as the Worlds get set to get started again. So, it's a ways back, but it's not. We're not going back years and years in the memory bank. He's got some experiences to draw on. Rick Tocchet talked about it again on Sunday. The teammates, JT Miller was asked if he has learned anything about Silovs here since he's been up and around the team. And he said, no, not really. I don't really talk to him, and he doesn't really talk to me other than the fun that they had with the pink shirt ahead of game 6. But they're kind of leaving him be. Silovs himself said that really he hasn't had a ton of interaction with Demko or Casey DeSmith that goaltenders know not to really bother a guy when he's in a bit of a groove here. So everybody's kind of leaving him on an island. But he said, hey, I'm ready for the challenge here. He took that approach into Nashville. He's going to take that approach here against the Edmonton Oilers. And I don't think there's much doubt that he is now the starting goaltender for the Vancouver Canucks. So look, if that Demko can get to a point where he's an option, that's great. But again, he's going to have been off for a while, and how quickly can he get up to playoff game speed? And even then, if he gets back, I think we all learned the last time that he came back and he wasn't available for long, and how much trust and faith ultimately to have in his knee and his body to withstand the rigors of playoff hockey. So I think the Canucks have a ton of faith in Artur Silovs, and he has responded to this point, obviously stepping up a weight class now against McDavid, Draisaitl, and the Edmonton Oilers, but this guy's as cool as they come, and so looking forward to seeing what he can do here in round number 2.
Miller's going to be expected to be the thorn in McDavid's side to start. I like that they've got a safety net. I think I could see Elias Lindholm as the backup plan for that if Miller doesn't have any success. But I love the fact that Miller's annoying and might get a little bit chirpy with McDavid, which might help get him off his game. What do you make of that individual one-on-one matchup, which obviously will be exploited more in games 1 and 2 than maybe on the road? But what do you think Miller's success rate will be like?
Well, he had success in the regular season. That was one of the reasons that the Vancouver Canucks prevailed in all of those games, certainly the 3 early ones when McDavid played. Look, JT loves a challenge. We know that about him. He can get fiery. The guy, I think, as much as you can sort of frustrate McDavid, and you can see it in his body language, Draisaitl's the guy that gets frustrated and takes some undisciplined penalties. And I do wonder, how do you try to counter Leon Draisaitl? He's such a unique player with his size and his skill. But he is a guy that has shown not afraid to use the stick as a bit of a weapon, but sometimes crosses the line. And, we'll see if the referees are keeping close tabs on the way things unfold here. So the challenges are big for the Vancouver Canucks. Knoblauch's going to have the option of, separating those two guys. At times he can load up and throw sort of the ultimate nuclear weapon out there. The Canucks have to be prepared. But I think the one thing that we saw from the Nashville series, and against those were the Predators, these are the Oilers, but the way the Canucks defended, they gave up 12 goals in 6 games. So yes, JT will be tasked with the forward matchup, but I do think that containing and ultimately trying to control McDavid and Draisaitl is going to be a team effort by the Vancouver Canucks, and the way their defense are playing. They're just not giving up much to shut out the Preds in the final game. They gave up 2 in game number 5, and one of those was the greasy power play goal, so only 1 5-on-5 goal against in the last couple of games for the Vancouver Canucks. And, whether it's Zadorov, whether it's Soucy, whether it's Tyler Myers, those big bodies, they're going to be asked to combat Leon Draisaitl head-to-head, and we'll see how they fare. Rick Tocchet with a ton of praise. He thought that his defense core, the veteran savvy, and just the size, he thought really kind of was the X factor in that series against the Nashville Predators, and it's hard to argue. Those guys stepped up. Zadorov and Lindholm both have the sort of experience of the Battle of Alberta, even though they were on the wrong side. When the Oilers and Flames met a couple of years ago, maybe you use that as added motivation. But I just have a feeling that Nikita Zadorov is going to be in the middle of just about everything that goes on in this series between the Canucks and the Oilers.
If you had to pick one of the secondary scorers who, and of course, as a lot, they were pretty quiet in round 1, Jeff, but if you had to pick one of the secondary scorers up front to be better and make an impact on this, who would you feel best about coming in?
Oh, I want Elias Pettersson, obviously, to find his game. It's hard to call him a secondary scorer, but the way that it's gone here with 1 goal in his last 19 games, that's exactly what he is. But outside of game 1, and really the third period of game 1, I was a little small d disappointed in Dakota Joshua, I thought, in that opening round. I just thought a guy at his size who can control the walls and win his battles and can be such a factor for the Vancouver Canucks. And really wasn't. Now, he and his line with Lindholm and Garland saw a lot of Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg and spent a fair bit of time defending. But I just think we know that there's more to give for Dakota Joshua. And I think now that he's got 6 games of playoff experience, I look for him to sort of internalize a little bit and recognize that he can be more of a factor and more of a force for the Vancouver Canucks. So, that's one of the guys certainly that I'm looking at. You know what, you're going to get an honest effort from Connor Garland, and he'll be scooting around out there and hopefully getting under the skin of the Edmonton Oilers. Nils Höglander, there's a ton of room for improvement in his production at the very least, although I thought he got better as the series went on against Nashville. But I look at Paterson just because and look, he made a nice play. Like, credit where it's due. He did make a nice play to get the puck to Besser on the game winner in game number 6. But the fact that we can sort of point to one play over 6 games and, it stands out because there just wasn't a whole lot to his body of work. He's got to be better. He knows it. The team knows it. I'm sure the Oilers know it. So I look at Patterson, I look at Dakota Joshua as 2 guys that I think have room to elevate their games here in round number 2.
The 4 days off allows for a mental reset too, doesn't it? Obviously the physical reset is great for guys like Hughes that might have been battling a little something, anybody else for that matter. But I also like what you just talked about with Joshua and others, that they all get to sort of take a deep breath and be like, okay, we've got playoff experience now. That's what that looks like. And now they get to sort of relaunch themselves now as grizzled vets of 6 games at the very least.
Yeah, and I think, look, even the guys that have been through 50 games of playoff experience would tell you that every game there's a little bit of a learning somewhere along the line. But for the guys that only had the bubble experience or had no playoff experience whatsoever, they had a brief overtime game. They had a scoreless game where neither side could blink right down to the wire. They had a game that was scoreless into the third period in game 5. Those are all sort of elements to rabid fan bases, and that will continue in round number 2. So, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of surprises in that regard. Now it's just a question of how quickly can guys get to their game, and the ones that weren't on the top of their game necessarily in round number 1, they can't wade into this second round series. It just can't happen. But look, the Canucks had some travel troubles getting out of Nashville on Saturday. Apparently weather kept their plane on the runway for a bunch of hours. So really Saturday was an all-day excursion just to get back to town. Not that they would have skated or practiced the day after eliminating the Predators. But Sunday, I think they opted, a few guys went on the ice, but for the most part, it was just a dry land workout day. And now, they had to wait to find out when they were going to play. Now they know, so they're going to have a couple of practice days. And that should be enough. I mean, it gives the coaches ample time to review whatever game tape they need of the Oilers and the Kings in their first round or whatever they want to look at with the Edmonton Oilers. So, yeah, I mean, both teams should be well rested and well prepared. And let's hope that adds up to a well-played series.
Jeff, great stuff. Last question. We haven't asked in the poll.
No.
Who's the underdog in this series and why?
Yeah, a lot of Sunday was spent trying to figure that out. I think based on recent form, you have to look at what McDavid and Draisaitl did in the first round against the Los Angeles Kings and that power play that is just so red hot right now. The way the Oilers played over the second half of the season, the Canucks' offensive struggles. I get that the Canucks swept the Oilers and that they won the Pacific Division, but I still think based on recent form and the play of the top end guys, you give the nod to the Edmonton Oilers. So, was I surprised that the majority of the ESPN pundits were picking the Oil? No. Was I surprised at 23 of 24? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, give the Canucks a fighting chance here. The way that they defend, the way that Rick Tocchet has them buying in. It was funny. JT was like, I don't see us as the underdog. Rick Tocchet was, no, eat it up, embrace this. Like, people have been writing us off all season long. Bring it on, serve it up. So, a couple of ways to consume that information if you're the Vancouver Canucks. But I'm sure that ESPN pundits poll will make its way into that Canucks locker room without a doubt if they need additional fuel, whatever the case. This is playoff hockey. It's the second round. You shouldn't need those outside motivations, but hey, if they help in any way whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, I do think that, look, the Oilers have gone through the playoff pain the last couple of seasons. They were built, they've added, they went big at the trade deadline again, trying to address some of their needs. It looks like their goaltending has come a ways. I'm still not sure that I'm sold on Stuart Skinner to get them to the Stanley Cup, but he's played better than he has in recent years. So, this is a team that's gone through the pain of playoff losses. They were built to win the Cup this year. The Canucks obviously now sort of working on house money. So I think the Oilers are the favorites here, but, I think the way the Canucks are playing, the way the Canucks are defending, I think they give the Oilers a pretty good fight.
So you'd say this is a successful season already for the Canucks. Is that fair, Jeff?
I do think expectations have to change over the course of the year. I was a guy that had them on the bubble to make the playoffs, but when you put up 50 wins and 109 points, I do think it's fair to move the goalposts a little bit. And when you win a division and you start on home ice against a wild card team, that hasn't always been a recipe for success for the Canucks in past playoffs. But yeah, I think for this group to get that playoff experience, to get that feeling of securing a round at the very least, kind of as the season unfolded, I thought, win a round, take your chances beyond the first round. But had they lost in the first round, all that regular season stuff wouldn't have been a thing. But yeah, right. I think you can qualify this now as a successful season, but by no means should anybody be resting on their laurels or parking it. No, you've got an opportunity here. You're playing with the big boys. You're one of 8 remaining teams in the Stanley Cup chase. So, step into the ring and take this challenge head on.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Thank you for the time, and we'll catch up later in the week.
All right, guys. Sounds fun.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova. Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? Do you have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you. Your application and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Joined now by John Shannon, the former executive producer, Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCown podcast, who, on top of being a British Columbian and following the Vancouver Canucks closely, does a lot of work on the Oilers broadcast.
True, yes.
Perfect guest here, Mr. Shannon. How are you?
Yeah, that just means I'm going to tick off both fan bases.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah, you certainly can't please them both, right? We know
You're
that.
going to. It's like the old days. We used to do those Calgary Edmonton series. You'd walk down the street, down Jasper Avenue at Edmonton, and people would say, "You love the Flames," and then you'd walk down 4th Avenue in Calgary, "You Oiler lovers."
Yeah.
You thought you were doing your job properly when everybody was ticked off at you.
So speaking of, how much do Cuthbert and Simpson love the Oilers, John?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, both of them were in Edmonton for a while. One of them played for them. One was living there. It'll be terrible, won't it? It'll just be, it is. I am just waiting for that moment on social media when somebody says they like the Oilers too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You got the two best broadcasters in the country doing the series, so life is good.
Yeah, it is the 18. Maybe just to explain, John, how typically Hockey Night in Canada and now Rogers, but previously the CBC go about these assignments.
Well, I certainly can't speak for what happens now, but you would primarily say what is our lead series, and then you'd put. In my time there, you'd put probably Bob Cole in the play-by-play seat. We had Don Whitman, that was who was predominantly in the West, which made it easier. We had Kenny Daniels, that was assigned to Montreal. What we tried to do in our period of time there, guys, was make it so that you didn't say, "Whoa, the Vancouver guy's doing the Edmonton games." And so we tried to create an aura of network broadcasters. And by doing that, it made it a little easier. Mind you, that was before social media. And people had a voice to suggest that everything is wrong with the broadcasters on every broadcast period for the rest of time.
Are the executives happy with an all Canadian matchup, or would they rather this series was split up in a Canadian and it was a Canadian and different series so that you could cover two different Canadian series?
Well, I think they would have liked the Maple Leafs to win Saturday, would have solved the problem. We would have had the best of both worlds, because what you were guaranteed and what you are guaranteed with an Edmonton-Vancouver series is a conference final with a Canadian team. So you have a Canadian team in the Final Four, which is really, really cool. There was, again, not to talk about the old days, but we used to have conniptions when we didn't have a team get to the third round. I remember in 1996, the Maple Leafs got knocked out in the second round by St. Louis, and we were apoplectic because there wasn't a team in the conference final. For a long time in the 80s and 90s, that was a given, guys.
Mm-hmm.
That happened regularly. And since the mid-90s, it has been a huge challenge to get more than one Canadian team through to the conference finals. And, when the Leafs and the Canucks played in 94 in the conference final, that was quite something. That was important, and that got the Canucks through to the Western Conference final that they won. So you're guaranteed one Canadian series. By the third round of the playoffs, there will be interest across the country in a Canadian team more so than a non-Canadian team. And you can only hope that one Canadian team gets to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah. And so everyone's aware, Cuthbert and Simpson would have been on the last Canadian team standing here. Now, I suppose had it been the Leafs, they would have stuck with the Leaf series, and it would have been.
I would suspect so.
Yeah. Would it have been Singh and DeBrusk here? You figure?
I don't know. I don't know. They were very tight-lipped about everything. I think that there was, first of all, John Shorthouse did a really good job in the Nashville series. But you would have a difficult time allowing Shorthouse to do a Vancouver Edmonton series and have Jack Michaels sit on the sidelines, for the games in Edmonton.
Shorty DeBrusk would have been.
Well, I was just going to say, would Shorty DeBrusk, I realize they probably haven't worked together much, if at all, before. And so perhaps you, as the executive producer, have chemistry concerns there, John. You can tell us about that. But that
I wouldn't have chemistry concerns with either of those guys. They're professionals.
Yeah.
They're professional. But I don't think you can. I don't think you can put John Shorthouse in home games in Edmonton. I don't think you can do that.
But they would have been fine with DeBrusque in games here in Vancouver.
But Louis done Vancouver games all season long on Saturday nights.
Mm-hmm.
Louis is, I know he does the regional Edmonton package, but Louis is Hockey Night in Canada's doubleheader #1 analyst.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what probably would have been smart, and we used to do this all the time. Why not have go to a 3-man system and put Jack Michaels doing play-by-play in Edmonton, John Shorthouse doing play-by-play in Vancouver, and Dave Tomlinson and Louis DeBrusque doing all the games together, and have one guy between the benches and one guy in the booth.
Makes way too much sense, John.
On top of that, you would have saved some of the travel money you're spending.
Yeah.
Let me ask it this way then, John. Province of British Columbia is more than 5 million people.
Mm-hmm.
It's damn near the GTA, albeit without the extended history of the Leafs and Two Solitudes and their pan-Canadian, pan-international fan base. Why does a market of 5 million get more respect from these broadcasters and the decisions? Like, we're far in a way bigger than Edmonton. Like, Edmonton is
the numbers don't prove that. The numbers don't prove that.
They don't?
The Edmonton Oilers have a larger national presence, ratings-wise, than the Vancouver Canucks.
Really?
Trophies will do that. Stanley Cups.
Trophies and superstars will do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Two of the greatest players that have ever lived have worn that jersey. That's going to have an effect. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, Matt, it is the great equalizer when it comes to that. You're right. British Columbia is the second largest English-speaking market in our country.
By far. By far.
No question. But there is a more national appeal for the Edmonton Oilers east of the Rocky Mountains. And by the way, there's an appeal for the Oilers. There's a lot of Albertans living in British Columbia too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know a lot of Oiler fans. A lot of them.
A lot of Oiler fans. Yes. I remember when we were doing distribution and we had an Oilers series and a Canucks series. An Oilers series and a Maple Leaf series. And we put the Maple Leafs into British Columbia, and the Lower Mainland was happy, and the interior was all over us for what we did. There are so many Albertans living particularly in the Okanagan and the Thompson. Mm-hmm. So by the way, you can never win. You can never win these things.
No. The tribalism in this series is going to be serious here, John. Like, it
already is.
It already is. They have not played a single game. Like, if this happens to be a 6 or 7 game series, like, it'll be gross by the end of it. Like, I'm a little bit worried as to where this goes, because these teams they basically have never faced each other. It's been 30 years, for heaven's sakes. Mm-hmm. Which seems crazy given they're always in the same division. But this is a novel experience. It involves a bit of a David versus Goliath, because two of the best players in the world are both on the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, except that when you look at the quality of players on the Canucks, there are, Edmonton doesn't have a defenseman as good as Quinn Hughes.
No.
I would argue on the forward situation, it's a lot closer than people realize if Paterson's playing well. There are a lot of similarities when you think about the depth of forwards, the style of play of the forwards. This could be a fun series to watch. And by the way, I think we said that last October, and it was 8-1 at Vancouver. So you never know.
Which brings us to the poll question: who's the underdog in this series, John?
Oh, I think it's Vancouver. Mm-hmm. From 2,500 miles away, I think it's Vancouver. And I do think it's Vancouver for the Paterson factor. And I think it's Vancouver because I think there's not enough appreciation for what Artur Shilovs did in that playoff series against Nashville. So the Oilers are right now running on all cylinders. And so much of the success of the Oilers isn't with Connor McDavid, because we know McDavid's going to deliver all the time. But you're getting playoff Leon. And playoff Leon is a beast. He is a beast, which is putting, I think, more pressure than ever on Paterson to do a comparable style of being a beast for the Canucks. You know, Leon goes up and down in the regular season. He's like a roller coaster. In the playoffs, he has always appeared to be magnificent, and he has been no different this round of playoffs against Los Angeles. So to me, it's, and we always like to simplify and have storylines, right? To me, this is Paterson versus Draisaitl.
Yeah.
And if Paterson doesn't match Draisaitl, it's going to be a long series for Vancouver.
Well, I've been saying that's the wild card here, is that if the if the Canucks offense can get going and it can resemble at all what they were in the first half, then I think this series gets evaluated very, very differently.
Correct.
What has the defensive structure, and we know it's improved under Chris Knobloch. They're not as structured as the Canucks have been this year. Is that fair to say? Like the Canucks have been keeping teams below 25 shots with regularity. Can the Oilers boast that kind of defensive structure now, do you think?
Well, against Los Angeles in the last couple of games, they certainly did. Mm-hmm. But they had their moments. You know, this is a team in Edmonton that does not manage prosperity well. They get on a roll. They go on a heater for 16 games. And then there's a malaise that sets in. They start to believe their own stuff too much. You know, I think people within the organization are hoping that this is a different situation because it is the Stanley Cup playoffs. But defensively, you know, Matthias Ekholm has made a huge difference. But there are still some question marks on a regular basis defensively about Evan Bouchard. Can he be managed differently by the Canuck forwards, perhaps? Darnell Nurse, when he plays a simple game, is a very good defenseman. But Darnell doesn't always want to play or think he needs to play a simple game. He tries to get a little too aggressive, tries to go up ice a bit too much. What Chris Knobloch has done, and Paul Coffey too, they have tried to simplify the game defensively for their group, and it seems to have paid off. And it certainly did pay off in the series against the Los Angeles Kings.
Just looking at Draisaitl, extraordinary.
Yeah. Oh no. He's the linchpin, and that's in addition to what Connor McDavid can deliver.
Mm-hmm. No, I know. I mean, like if this was your number one lead dog in a playoff series, you'd feel good about him. That he's number two. Like it's 54 career postseason games, 87 points, 36 goals. He is nearly an assist per game in the Stanley Cup playoffs over his career. And then he's more than 2/3 of a goal per game
right.
in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So
he's a beast, man. He's a beast. Yeah. You know, and you watch what as the series goes on, you know, they will definitely try to keep them apart. You know, the value of having McDavid on one line and Draisaitl on the other puts 46 minutes of ice time with one of those two stars on the ice.
Exactly. Yeah.
But at the end of periods, out of commercial breaks, out of penalty kill situations, Chris Knobloch is not afraid to put them out there for a shift together.
Yeah.
And that is another lethal weapon for the two of them. And the other guy that's really made a difference in Edmonton is Evander Kane. You know, Evander Kane is, you know, he's almost got that playoff mode too. And he certainly in the 5 games in this series has against Los Angeles was very, very good.
As long as Mark Spector's forking him a little bit, he gets to go on, right?
Mm-hmm. Players do not listen to the media.
Oh, come on. He made direct reference to it. Hey.
Spector may be the Canucks MVP before this series is all said.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
What did you make of the Canucks closing out Nashville in Game 6?
Gosh, that's a few days ago. That's a long time.
I know.
I mean, it's hard to.
We'll get into that in a second too.
It's hard to remember that far back. Well, you know, I think I told, I had no doubt that the Canucks were going to win the series. I mean, Jimmy Rutherford could have played goal. I think they were going to win. Just because I like some of the leadership of the Bessers of the world, the Millers of the world. I think Quinn Hughes learned how to play the game a little differently after Andrew Burnett's team targeted him so much, but the faster he moved the puck, the more effective he was. And then some good depth guys made a difference too. I mean, Garland, Joshua have done what they've done for most of the season now. And that's why this is going to be a very difficult series to pick. The Canucks did what they had to do to win the series, and hopefully they got some rest before this next one starts in order for them to be as healthy as possible.
Well, that's right. We brought up the TV, and TV is part of the reason why they get this extra rest. And we were saying how important it was for them to win in 5 games because of the rest.
Yeah.
It turns out they were able to win it in 6 games and still get some rest, which was pretty big because it sounds like there's a few of the key players that have got already, after just one round, a fair amount of bumps and bruises. Yeah. So this has been pretty valuable. Huh?
Everybody's banged up by now already. There's no question about it. By the way, at a certain point late last week, there was discussion that this series is supposed to start Sunday, then Tuesday, and finally Wednesday. Yeah. And both teams were told on Saturday, you're going Tuesday.
Yeah.
And hence the thought that it was going to be a Tuesday start. And then finally, we ended up, because of the concert in Dallas on Wednesday, that they have to deliver a game Tuesday night for both networks in both countries, and then a game on Wednesday night too. So that's why it ended up flip-flopping. I'm sure listen, the Dallas Stars are probably not happy about it, but the Dallas Stars put themselves in that position.
You go 7 games, you don't get that benefit anymore. No.
Right. 2 more questions here. Number one, who do you like in how many games?
It's a pick 'em for me. This is a 7-game series. Blake's talking about what it's going to be for a fortnight. It is going to be a crazy 2 weeks. It is going to be a crazy 2 weeks. And I honestly, I can justify both teams winning. Do I think the Oilers are favored? Yes, I do. But I could justify the Canucks winning this series and would not be surprised if they did.
You think Thatcher Demko makes an appearance in this series?
I don't know. No. I mean, I don't know. The great thing about having Shilov's play as well as he does is the other 2 guys can get rest and they can take their time with him. And it's not when he loses 1 game, but if he loses a second game of the series, then you have to be concerned.
Senator Shannon stumping for Governor General here. You may.
Well, listen,
diplomacy. No, it's okay, Your Excellency. I understand.
Listen.
In both markets.
I drove across the Rockies enough, and I know where the Continental Divide is, and I know where the water goes one way and the water goes the other way, and I want to go both places. How's that?
Well, and Blake's talking about the tribalism in the series. We have our own personal red deer in this series, right? Like,
sure,
you get up to PG and east of PG, you start to find a lot of you start to find a lot of you start to find.
I tell you what, as you know, I do enough games in Edmonton. There's a lot of people coming from Dawson Creek.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised. And people crossing across the Yellowhead to make a track to Rogers Place. So that's the other thing. We have to make sure we get differentiation between Rogers Place and Rogers Arena. We can just say Rogers and keep everybody happy.
Or we don't say that at all.
Yeah, utterly annoying.
Well, you know what? Finally, somebody in the head office is going to say our investment paid off because we're going to have good numbers and a good series.
I saw the graphic the Canucks released. The home games were sponsored by, game 1 sponsored by TD Bank or whatever. Yeah. Game 7 is brought to you by Rogers at Rogers Arena. Like, you've already got the 1 billing. Do you need the double billing?
By the way, the what was Tockett's line about pain?
It's Brunette. Yeah.
No. It was Tocchet.
Yes, you're right.
The t-shirts are coming.
Yeah,
the t-shirts are coming for this series.
Yeah,
and they're also going to be t-shirts of Arthur's She Loves shirt.
Yes.
Embrace the pain.
The
There
she
you go.
shirts.
Embrace the pain.
Yeah.
The she shirts have to make an appearance.
Yeah,
no
the
doubt.
she shirts are coming, and Embrace the Pain t-shirts are coming.
Lastly, we saw the photo. Tell us about Bob Cole's memorial on the Rock Friday.
Well, it was magnificent. You know, there was about I think 8 or 9 of us that made the trek from elsewhere, from the hockey community to pay our respects. The family was remarkable. The service was fantastic. There were 5 speakers, and McLean was number 5.
Mhm.
And he was number 5 in what the speech was all about too. The kids, all 4 of Bob's children spoke, and they were magnificent. And Bob Cole would have been the proudest father of all time. But it was tears. It was a ton of laughter. And it's one of those times where you're going to look back and say, man, I'm glad I went. I'm glad I went, because it was, you know, the 3 girls and Robbie. By the way, Robbie Cole lives in Penticton. How's that?
Yeah. Oh,
runs a big plumbing company in Penticton now.
Oh, does he really?
Hopefully,
Yeah.
Sekeres and Price listener then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We'll have to reach out
and,
when we're at
and by the way, and plays at Fairview Mountain.
how about that?
So there is something.
We have
there
many
is-
a listener and friend who's up at Fairview.
Mhm.
Well, there is something to be said that, you know, my friendship with Cole was long and deep from 1977, and his son now lives 25 miles from where I grew up and plays the same golf course where I learned to play the game. And we had a good chuckle about that too.
Great. Marvelous stuff, John. Thank you for this. We'll catch up next week.
And I am not running for office, but I just want everybody to have a good time.
But, you know, if the prime minister wants to reach out, come next governor general.
You make a good one.
He
I can
takes the
see it.
call.
I
He
can
takes
see
the
it.
call.
Yeah.
Listen, trust me, being governor general is a lot more fun than being the prime minister. Trust me.
No,
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
You have to learn how to say Rideau properly, correct?
Wow. Plus, you get the big grounds there at Rideau Hall as opposed to that dump at 24/7.
If Clarkson can do it, you can do it. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's already a CBC connection to that office, Shannon.
You mean Madam Adrian Clarkson?
Madam
That's it.
Clarkson.
That's it, yes.
And John, I went.
According to Blake, it's just Clarkson.
Hey, it's like hockey. I'm just calling
Hey.
play by play.
Check this out. I went to the Missioner Awards at Rideau Hall when she was Governor General. These are big journalism awards. And so we were prepped on the way over. It's Your Excellency. We get to it, and her protocol officer says, no, she's not about that. Call her Madame Clarkson.
Madam, that's right.
Madame
We used to line up at the cafeteria at CBC together every day, and she wore pink slippers. So
There you go. Nothing separating the two.
nope.
So a pair of pink slippers, Sean, and you're on your way to being Governor General.
Thanks, John.
Let me make a note of that.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.
Time now for the Golf Report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, counting down to opening day Friday. Huge opening on Friday. And the club reminds organizers of groups of 12 or more, it is time to reach out, lock in those tee times for 2024. The prime times are filling up fast. And just for reaching out to reserve that tee time, you, the organizer, plays for free. Tell us about your group at whistlergolf.com/groups.
The weather on Friday looking
It looks incredible.
by the way.
Yeah. Fairways and greens. So everybody's playing Whistler Golf Club on Friday. You're going to have a blast. Taylor Pendrith gets his first PGA Tour win. The Canadian from Richmond Hill, Ontario, the 18th Canadian to win on the PGA Tour. He birdies 18 after poor Ben Coles. Oh, what a meltdown looking for his first PGA Tour victory. He flubs a chip, leaves it in the bunker, and then misses a 5-footer for par, which would have created a playoff. Mac Hughes, Pendrith's teammate at Kent State University, meets him on the final green, beer in hand, says, hey, you were there for my first and only PGA Tour victory, so it was only right. Did you know they all played together at Kent State? Corey Connors, Taylor Pendrith was the best man in Connors' wedding. Now, he's 32 years old. He's not exactly a young guy.
But he wins early enough that you've got 6 to 8 years to build on that. you know?
Exactly.
So,
and here's the thing, Blake, you may remember 2 years ago, he was selected for the President's Cup team over Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin. Went 0-4. Now, granted, Team USA is typically miles better than the international side of the President's Cup and has dominated that event. But he goes 0-4, and Blakey hasn't done a whole lot since then. He missed 12 cuts last year, had a tie for third amongst 4 top 10s. And then this year he's missed 6 cuts, and he's got 3 top 11 finishes. So this sort of came from nowhere with Pendrith. He's now into elevated events on the PGA Tour, including the Wells Fargo Championship.
PGA Championship.
And the PGA Championship at Valhalla.
One. Yeah. So congratulations to him on that, because it's always nice to see the Canadians at the majors. Tougher to qualify for those, obviously. But it's great. Now, he was coming off of some tendonitis too, right?
Yeah.
So that might have explained some of the early season foibles for him, but obviously feeling very good about things. Now, he had 1 bogey from the start of the back 9 on Friday.
Yep.
Second round, he had 1 bogey in that span.
You have been looking at the Canadians on the weekend and how, tends to be a Canadian or two in position, and then the weekend comes around, and sadly, they've been playing their worst golf.
Well, without the birdie on 18, it would have been his worst round of the week. He tied for his worst round of the week, but he had enough of a lead. He had a multi-shot lead going into the final round, and he was able to nurse it home, which is great.
Scores went low at the Byron Nelson. Elsewhere in the world of golf, Tiger Woods has announced he will be playing the 2024 PGA Championship at Valhalla in Kentucky, which starts in a week and a half here. And he has also received a special exemption to the U.S. Open next month at Pinehurst number 2. So as of now, the biggest name in the game is going to be competing for the next 2 majors stateside. We'll see about the Open Championship.
I wonder if he's considered losing weight.
Tiger?
Yeah. Like, he's so bulky. I don't mean he's fat at all. He's not. I mean, he's just so muscular.
The upper body mass and what it's doing.
Like, I wonder if he would be better off slimming down a little bit, leaning out, being lighter. Maybe that causes a little.
The younger Tiger Woods, who was like a taller, scrawnier guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's got access to the best physiologists, nutrition. Surely if that opinion carries weight, no pun intended, I'm sure it's been mentioned to him.
But it's all just opinion, right? Some guys are going to say building muscle around the problematic area is going to support it better, but it's all just, different opinions. So.
Yeah, it would be nice to see him play 4 rounds, look comfortable.
That's the thing. He just looked like he's struggling so much to make it through.
The narrative has gone, can he compete, can he complete?
Yeah.
Sadly, with the amount of tournaments that he's had to withdraw from in the past couple of years.